Hello, my name is Namheon Ryan Lee, and this is my COGS 101 final presentation on Does Body Language Have a Significant Effect in Communication? To provide an overview of this presentation, Article 1 is on how emotional feelings are expressed through different physical motions. Article 2 is on how facial expressions and vocal cues affect communication. My hypothetical research is on which of the three factors that I discussed earlier, which are physical motions, facial expressions, and vocal cues, have the most impact on communication. The hypothesized results of my proposed study is that vocal cues, facial expressions, and physical motions should have the nearly same impact on communication. Some remains of future work is to discover another aspect that could have a strong impact on human communication. My first article is Body Language in the Brain, Constructing Meaning from Expressive Movement, Frontiers in Human Neuroscience by Tipper, Signorini, and Grafton. The purpose of this article is to determine how emotions are expressed through different body movements. Essentially, the study's goal is to see if the emotional aspects of performances are independent of physical movements, choreography, and visual aspects that can be seen on the surface level. Here are the methods for Article 1. 46 neurologically healthy right-handed individuals were selected as a part of the study. 30 of them were women, and the mean age of these participants were 24.22 years old, and the range of the age are 19 to 55 years old. Performances were then choreographed by professional dancers from the University of California, Santa Barbara. A total of 8 themes were depicted: happy, hopeful, fearful, in agony, and in love, relaxed, ill, and exhausted. Dancers were masked to make sure participants focused on the body language. Each theme was performed by 2 actors and in 2 different angles to produce a total of 32 videos. Participants completed an interpretation task to assess their interpretation skills. With the keyboard, participants selected one of the 4 options that they considered matching the theme of the performance. Then, consistency scores and response times were recorded. So, what were the results for Article 1? Participants received greater transmission of intended expressive meaning from performance to viewer through physical expressions. And interpretation of movements were done more rapidly with pantomime sequences. Brain activity was boosted when dance and pantomimed movements were involved compared to a resting baseline. Brodmann areas 1 through 18 all showed a greater activity with observations of body language. Frontoparietal regions, temporal, occipital, and the insular cortex, and the subcortical regions of amygdala and hippocampus had the most impact in the brain. And based on consistency scores and response times recorded, data showed faster information processing and decision making with the use of body language. My second article is the inferences of attitudes from nonverbal communication in 2 channels by Meherbian and Ferris. The purpose of this article is to study and compare the independent effects of facial attitude and vocal cues and how they relate to communication and interactions amongst individuals. In addition, the study aims to discover whether facial attitude or vocal cues are more crucial when they are combinedly expressed. Here are the methods for Article 2. 62 female undergraduate students in the University of California participated to fulfill their introductory psychology requirement. 25 assessed the selection of a neutral word. 17 assessed facial and vocal expressions independently. And 20 assessed facial and vocal expressions together. The 25 participants rated a speaker's 15 words in a 9-point scale, with +4 being like very much and -4 being dislike very much. The word maybe was automatically given a rating of 0.28. 3 female speakers recorded the word maybe in a positive, negative, and neutral tone. Each tone was then recorded twice to make up a total of 18 audio samples. Two photos of each of the 3 expressions recording a positive, negative, and neutral attitude were taken. Both assessed an attitude scale from +3 to -3. Participants were then presented with a combination of vocal tones and facial expressions. The attitude scores of facial and vocal cues were analyzed and combined with a numerical value. So, what were the results for this Article 2? The +3 to -3 rating was heavily impacted by both facial and vocal attitude. However, facial attitude and vocal cues don't have significant interaction effects, meaning that they are independent of each other. The +3 to -3 rating was a combined sum of these independent effects. A linear point slope formula was determined to compare the effects of facial attitude and vocal attitude. AT indicates the total attitude score, AF indicates the facial attitude score, and AV indicates the vocal attitude score. As I mentioned earlier, to compare the effects of facial attitude and vocal attitude, the linear point slope formula was calculated, which was equal to AT is equal to 1.5 AF plus 1.03 AV. And because the coefficient of AF was greater compared to AV, this indicates that facial attitude matters more than the vocal attitude. And even though facial attitude and vocal attitude may have slightly difference in magnitude of the overall attitude, a generally more positive expression in facial attitude and or vocal attitude correlates to a higher rating, indicating a more positive response, and the opposite applies for the vice versa. Essentially, facial attitude matters more than the vocal attitude. The purpose of my hypothetical research is to determine how the brain emotionally reacts when vocal tones, facial attitudes, and physical expressions of the body are combined. Also, it seeks to find which aspects of the three contribute the most to the brain's reactions. So, what were the methods for my hypothetical research? 51 individuals within the age of 18 to 45 were chosen to make sure participants have fully functioning brains, and 3 groups of the 17 people were exposed to all vocal tones, physical expressions, and facial attitudes in a 60-minute conversation of a set of random topics. Each type of these categories were expressed in a positive, neutral, and a negative way. 17, so first group, was exposed to a positive vocal tones more than the other 2. 17 were exposed to a positive facial attitudes more than the other 2, and 17 were exposed to a more positive physical expressions than the other 2. Each of the groups of 17 individuals then rated on a 1 to 10 scale on how they felt about the conversation. 1 indicated unhappy and undelightful with the conversation, and 10 indicates happy and content with the conversation. The average rating results of the 3 groups were compared, and since the emphasis of the research was primarily on positive aspects, the sector with the highest average rating shows the biggest impact. So, what were the results for my hypothetical research? The 17 participants who received more positive vocal tones averaged a 7.1 rating. The 17 participants who received more positive facial expressions averaged a 7.7 rating, and The 17 participants who received more positive body language averaged an 8.5 rating. Because participants with the highest average rating was the body language group, body language has the most impact on communication between individuals compared to facial expressions and vocal tones. Even so, all three aspects of vocal tones, facial expressions, and body language had an impact on the participants' average rating. Therefore, all three aspects still matter. However, throughout this research, it is conclusive that body language is extremely important in how we communicate. Here are my APA citations and references. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.